All right, it looks like we are now live. So welcome today for our annual Government Career Day. This is a joint venture for our tri-institutional campus. So hopefully there are folks joining from all over our area campus today. This is our first session of 3 today that we will be hosting. So this is our Careers with Impact panel. Why public service may be the right path for you. Today we have 2 additional sessions. One is going to be a focus on interviewing in the public sector. And then our last session of the day is going to be our resumes in the federal service. So feel free to come to all or any of them today. We're glad you're here with us right now. I have the honor this morning of introducing our moderator for this event. Paula Herzmark. So Paula is with us today, and Paula has a long career in public, private, and non-for-profit sectors. Most notably, she has served as the executive director of the Denver Health Foundation, the CEO of the Robert E. Loop Jewish Community Center, president and CEO of Prime Time Cable in Governor Richard Lamb's cabinet, as the executive director of the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, and as his legislative liaison. She served on numerous community boards and is right now leading our Heart Center for Public Service. That is partnership with the MSU Denver campus. So Paula, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you to add anything else to your introduction, and then also to have a brief introduction from our panelists. So thanks again, everyone, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and visit with you all. We have an outstanding panel, and so I don't want to take any more time. I think we should plunge right in and ask each of them to share just a little bit about their current role and what spurred each of you into public service. And then we'll move into the substance of the discussion. So Jesse, do you want to start? You've got it, you're on mute. You want to unmute.
That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So everyone, I'm Jesse Aviles. I work for the Environmental Protection Agency here in Denver. I started working at the EPA in 2007 at the Puerto Rico office. I am from Puerto Rico. I graduated from the University of Puerto Rico in 1998 with a degree in industrial microbiology. My current work here at EPA is as a remedial project manager under a law known as CERCLA, and CERCLA is more commonly known as Superfund. Before that, my work was similar, but under a different law called RCRA. And CERCLA and RCRA, what they do is they address environmental cleanup. I started university thinking I wanted to be a doctor. And along the way, one of my professors came with this environmental cleanup idea. And well, here I am today. And you know, what a better place to actually address cleaning up the environment than the EPA.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth?
Hi. So I am currently a Title I paraprofessional with Jefferson County Public Schools. And I originally started my position in August to focus on doing restorative justice with students who either have behavioral problems or students who are struggling academically. And I am in a unique position, I think, on this panel as somebody who is just starting their public service career. I just recently got my Master of Public Administration from CU Denver School of Public Affairs. So my position mostly is working within the school district and making sure that all of those rules and regulations are followed, but also focusing specifically on the students. So I think it's a unique position to be in public service.
Great, thank you so much. Joe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Garcia, and I am the Senior Local Taxpayer Advocate for the state of Colorado. Actually, the Taxpayer Advocate Service is an independent branch of the Internal Revenue Service, so I work for the federal government. And basically, folks, we help folks all across the state resolve their problems with the IRS, and I oversee all of those operations. Our great state of Colorado. started my career in public service after a very long stint in Big Four public accounting, and wanted something a little different and wanted more of a work-life balance. And here I am today. I actually did my entire undergrad at Metro State, so this is my alma mater. I'm very happy to be here and also join all of the other panelists here today.
Paula, you're on mute.
Sorry. Has Vice Admiral Dumont joined us yet? Okay, well, let's proceed, and when he arrives, we'll welcome him then. Very much appreciative to have all of you panelists here today. And I think we'll start out this discussion with a conversation about some of the myths about public service. There have been many common misconceptions that people have about careers in public service, that they can't make much money and so you shouldn't do it, that it gets boring, that it can be too political, that it isn't well managed or well organized, or there are many myths and misconceptions. To me, nothing could be further from the truth. None of those myths are true. And I think we have an opportunity to hear a little bit from our panel this morning about why that is the case, why these misconceptions about public service in general are inaccurate. And so let's start this time, Joe, if you will, and address this question.
All right, I'll get started. Thanks, Paula. You know, I agree with you, Paula. There are a lot of myths out there regarding public service. Most of them stem from a monetary standpoint. Can't make much of a difference. You'll be stuck there forever. People go to public service to put them out to pasture, so to speak, and D, all of the above. And I absolutely agree with Paula. Nothing could be further from the truth, folks. I was in public accounting for many, many years. I worked in private industry. I jumped around from a couple of different public accounting firms. And at the end of the day, I ended up in public service, all with the Internal Revenue Service and now the Taxpayer Advocate Service. You know, folks, I think public service truly gives you an opportunity to make a difference. And that's what I wanted to do with my career. You know, I didn't want to chase dollars. I didn't want to chase a career ladder that would absolutely burn me out. I did not want my job to take over my life or my family's life or my children's lives. And public service has very much allowed me to do that. You know, when folks talk about, you know, salary, and from a monetary standpoint, you can make a tremendous salary in public service well over 6 digits. So from a monetary standpoint, folks, we're just going to knock down that myth right off the bat, right up here, right up front here, and just dispel that myth. I've truly been able to make a difference in the position that I've worked in public service. So if you're wondering if you can make a difference in public service, the answer is yes, you can. And you know, honestly, I've had tremendous career advancement over the time in my career. And so if you're worried or thinking about the myth that you're not able to be in a position of leadership, management, or be able to grow your career over however many years you plan on working, which hopefully aren't that many, we can all shoot for retirement sooner than later, then I think public service is for you. I think folks have also a myth that there's a lot of things that public service doesn't allow you to partake in, such as travel, and you know, getting to see different places and do different things and work on different projects. And I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country, including outside of the country, with my roles here at the IRS and the Taxpayer Advocate Service. So agree with Paula, and I'm sure the other panelists will chime in. A tremendous opportunity when it comes to working in public service.
Thank you, Joe. Elizabeth, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I certainly wholeheartedly agree with what Joe said. But mostly I think that it takes special people to remain committed to a public service role. And I think that it makes a difference whether or not you're looking at it from the macro view or the micro view. And there are certain times that you might struggle, and you might think you might fall into those myths. But generally, I think that every day things happen that make us recommitted to that role. So for my role specifically, there are always students who are struggling with behavioral problems, and so being able to work with them using restorative justice, really seeing one student kind of turn around or have that like aha epiphany moment is really rewarding. And so I think that keeps pushing us forward. So I think like taking those small wins and running with them is really important. So remaining committed, but generally I think that those myths pretty much can be dispelled, but it definitely takes your perspective and making sure that you are committed to your role and making sure that you are pushing forward with it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jesse?
Well, 2 myths. One of those that I found as I was growing up, and that I still hear a lot. Lazy and corrupt. Public servants, are there for a paycheck, and they're just writing it for retirement, and corrupts. They have said bribery and stuff for their own personal gain. And those are 2 things that I found that are full-on myths. The people that I work with, they know the regulations. We're here for one of those sayings that I have is, we're here for the people and the environment. And that is true of everyone that I've worked with. We know the regulations. We're always trying to strive to get the most benefit to improve the health of the people and the health of the environment. We're not here writing it out. We're doing work that is hard every day, trying to understand what the needs of the community are, what the needs of, what the regulation let us do, won't let us do. And we're not here to try to shake anyone down for anything that we do. And I not only say that with the people that I work with EPA, in my work with EPA, I also work with local governments. And the people that I've met throughout my 20-some years in this career. And I also work in the private sector before, dealing with people in government. So I've been on both sides, and I find that those are myths and that they do not have an inkling of truth. They are just made grander by news, but that's not what you will find in your day-to-day interactions with us, with public servants.
Thank you. And I see that Vice Admiral Mike Dumont has joined us. Welcome. I wonder if you would take a moment to introduce yourself and what your current role is and what spurred you into public service. And then when you're through with that introduction, we've just been talking about some of the common misconceptions that people have about public service. And if you would address maybe some of those myths and why you think they aren't accurate. So welcome.
Sure, thanks. Sorry for joining so late. I had some technical issues on this end. So my name is Mike Dumont. I'm Navy Vice Admiral. I am currently the Deputy Commander of United States Northern Command in Colorado Springs. And I'm wrapping up that job now after 2.5 years, and I'll be retiring from the military later this month. I've also had a parallel career. In addition to being a Navy Reserve officer, I've also been a lawyer, and I've been a state prosecutor and a federal prosecutor. And then after 9/11, I got hired by the Defense Department as a senior civilian to be head of counterterrorism. I've traveled all over the world for the government. I've lived in 3 foreign countries as a civil servant, and I've been able to experience much more than I ever anticipated coming from a small town in Maine. Public service for me has been pretty much most of my adult life, except for 3 years when I was in private practice out of law school. Some of the misconceptions, I think, are obviously pay, because the government doesn't pay as well as some other private employers, but For federal civil servants, we typically do well, and we have investment opportunities for our retirement portfolios, and you can have a comfortable life as a civil servant. I think one of the biggest misconceptions can be the bureaucracy in the negative sense of the word. And I found a lot of leeway, a lot of flexibility, and actually a lot of creativity in the civil service, both in the military side of the house of the civil service and the true civilian side, because we have a lot of civil servants who are supporting the U.S. military. They're very creative people, and they have a lot of flexibility. And sometimes the rules can be a little bit onerous because there are a lot of rules in the federal bureaucracy and the civil service. And I find if you know them, if you know the rules, you can frequently find a way to get around the rules. And but it's one of those things that people should not be turned off by. And my career field has been international affairs and foreign relations. And if you're interested in that type of activities, I've negotiated the release of hostages overseas. I was chief of staff of U.S. forces in Pakistan at the time of the bin Laden raid. I spent a year in Afghanistan as a civilian. And it's just been an exciting career that I'm thankful that I've really focused on my government career, both military and civilian. Paula, is that a good start?
All I can say is, wow. Yes, I would say that's a good start. Thank you. I too have served in both the private and public sectors. And I can remember I running a private cable television company, realizing after a few years that at the end of the day, I didn't really care whether the guy in 14G got a good picture on his television set. That's really bad if you're running a company. But the realization really came that what I cared about was doing something for people and making a difference in people's lives. And there's nothing like the public sector and the not-for-profit sector that give you those opportunities. And all of your stories contribute to that breaking down of myths. Thank you very much. This is terrific. There have been a lot of conversations this year about equity and justice and social justice, diversity and inclusion in our communities. Would you each speak to ways that you have seen your agency or your field addressing access to public service with these sort of categories in mind of equity, diversity, justice, etc.? And let's start this time with Jesse.
Okay. I was lucky. Well, first, I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm a Hispanic. I'm a guy. My main language is Spanish. So I got into the EPA, and I've seen people like me here at the EPA. But I'll talk a little bit more about the field itself more than the agency, because I've been lucky in many ways. And one of the ways that I was lucky was that when I started working, I got into a small company, and that small company had a sister company. There were women in there, but they weren't just any kind of woman. They had their bachelor's degree. That's how they got into the field. But they went on to get their master's in environmental science. And not content with that, they went and got also an engineering degree, because engineering degree is kind of a thing to have in the environmental field for certain things, and they wanted to have it all. Those are the women that I started, right off of my career, and that was very, very nice. Just working around them, because I had to shoot for them. If they were doing that, I had to do that. So it was good to see that, and those were there 20 years ago. Those are the women today in my field. And also working in Puerto Rico, I guess that because I'm from Puerto Rico, I'm used in that field, I'm used to seeing different genders, different colors, different everything in the field that populates that just kind of, it's the people that I work with every day. But you know what the other thing could be is that maybe our bosses were just a little bit ahead of their time and gave this mixed group of people the opportunity to move ahead, to become part, and not only to become part, but today be the face of what the environmental field is out there. So I see our variety just from the people that works around me.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, certainly. So in public education, equity is difficult sometimes, and specifically, so my role is to implement restorative justice and sort of mediation techniques to sort of help students. And what I've noticed, and I know that we'll get to this question in a little bit, but that especially with COVID and working remotely, there's a lot of inequity between students, and especially in their home lives. And so a large part of my role is to ensure, and most of the roles of those who do similar work as me, is to ensure that we're giving each of those students equal opportunities, even though they might not have equal circumstances. So for instance, I mean, just in small situations, students who don't have internet at home, right? Like that makes a really big difference in their education. But aside from that, there's also behavioral. There are studies that show that boys often are sort of punished more than girls are for behavioral outbreaks. And so in our roles, we're always consciously thinking of are we reaching out to this student because they need help, or are we reaching out to this student because we just want them to quiet down, right? So we have to ensure that we're thinking of that equitably among all students. And so my role particularly is when students do come to me and I am paired with a student who has a behavioral issue, is searching far more beyond you are making a distraction in class, right? To what are the causes of that? And so I think that is one, really rewarding. For my position, I get to really build relationships with students, and building relationships is something that I think in all fields, but particularly public service is invaluable. So I get to build relationships with those students, and ultimately reach a place where they are feeling more empowered. And so I think that in that sense, we're taking a situation where inequity maybe was the root of why this student in particular was sent to me and not another student, but we're getting to a place where that student feels empowered enough to go back into the classroom and set a different example. So I think that in those ways, my role and the role of many instructors and admin in public administration, in public education, is to really make sure that we're giving students as equal of an opportunity as we can, given their circumstances.
Great, thank you. Joe?
Yeah, so, first I'll say that my career in public service has truly allowed me to work with a tremendous amount of folks from all different backgrounds, all different demographics, gender, race, you name it. So if you're looking for a career where you get to meet a tremendous amount of amazing folks from all walks of life, I highly encourage folks to look at public service. When we talk about equity and we talk about equal opportunity and all of those things, there is tremendous policy and procedure in place in many organizations, and definitely here at the Department of Treasury, the IRS, Taxpayer Advocate Service, where folks truly do have an opportunity. I think Jesse said it well. I am also of Latino descent and have had tremendous opportunity in my career, and I've seen others far surpass me from all different walks of life. So my career here at the public service has seen veterans get hired, folks who may have had a disability, climb the ladder and have opportunity for tremendous employment and to make a difference in folks' lives. And so if you're looking for diversity, truly looking for a career that focuses on equity and equal opportunity, being trained on all of these things along the way, then I highly encourage you to take another look at public service, because I don't think anybody would be disappointed in that arena.
Super, thank you. Mike?
Sure. So, I have found the federal government and even state government when I was in state government very approachable with regard to diversity and inclusion. And same thing during my career as a prosecutor when it comes to justice, not looking at the individual's race or heritage or ethnicity or religious preference or anything else. I would echo what Joe said. I have worked with some amazing people who were not even born in the United States, but are now American citizens and work for the federal government or they're in the military. I've had bosses that were female who were some of the best military officers I've ever come across in my 35 years. I will tell you also, I'm the highest ranking gay guy in the United States military today. And I served the entirety of my career through Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And then after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it was a little interesting at first, but then I introduced my husband to my colleagues and my bosses, including my boss, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And not an issue, not a hiccup, not a problem. They wouldn't tolerate it. I wouldn't tolerate it. But I would say that diversity and inclusion in the civil service and in the military is actually something that is of paramount importance to us. As Joe said, we have a lot of programs and a lot of regulations that pertain to it. We're trained on it exceedingly well. And on the military side, we try to pride ourselves at being some of the leaders when it comes to changes with diversity, culture, and inclusion in our organization. And are there problems? Sure. Do you occasionally come across ignorant or stupid people? Yes. They're everywhere. We just need to deal with them and identify them and deal with them. And that's what our supervisors do, both in our civil service and in the military. But by and large, I would say that there have been huge, huge changes regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion in our government employment at the federal level. And I think it also has permeated those companies that we deal with because we're the biggest consumer, the biggest customer, the federal government. We have a lot of contracts with various companies, large and small and gigantic. And we also insist and impart on them some rules on diversity and inclusion and requirements to use veteran-owned businesses, female-owned businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually think we are fairly progressive and at a forefront as compared to a lot of organizations.
These are really thoughtful and helpful comments in understanding these issues and public service. Thank you all. These were outstanding. I want to keep going though, so that we can get to all the questions. And so next, I'd like to ask each of you if you had a mentor or some influential person throughout your career that has made a difference in your ability to succeed in public service. And Elizabeth, let's start with you.
I would say that I'm very fortunate to have had many influential mentors throughout my academic career and even professional career. Specifically, I had a college professor who spurred me into public administration in the first place as I was contemplating what I was going to do for my master's. I was currently at the time studying political science and English literature. And I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That's just the path. That's what success is to me. I'm going to be a lawyer. And he really sat me down and was like, why is that your only option? Why do you feel that that's your only option? And so we had a very, very insightful conversation. And it wasn't just that I needed to be a lawyer. It was that I wanted to be somebody who was helping people and doing something important with the skills that I possessed. And because of my upbringing, lawyer was the only thing that I thought of, right? That was success. It was either lawyer, doctor, and I didn't like blood, couldn't be a doctor. So he ultimately spurred me into public administration and helped me find colleges and ultimately pointed me towards CU Denver. So he was instrumental in even pushing me towards public administration. So I really do value him for that. And then I've had some wonderful supervisors who have been really wonderful managers in the way that they have helped me cultivate the sort of skills that I bring to the table, and we're very good at helping me pick those out. So I really think just being able to take any person that comes into contact with you in your career and your educational path and seeing what they can offer, because I don't ever think it was just one person for me. There were a lot of really wonderful people that I interacted with that really helped me become the person that I am today in public service.
Joe, you want to go next?
Yeah, I actually was looking forward to this question. So folks, I've had many, as Elizabeth has said. I was very fortunate at Metro to have two amazing professors who absolutely, quite honestly, changed my life, changed the trajectory of my career. Folks that were amazingly passionate about federal income tax, go figure. And so that's Rick Prosser and Al Richards. Changed my life during my undergrad there at Metro, spurred me on to do the tax program at the University of Denver. And then, as Elizabeth mentioned as well, some really good points that she alluded to. On the job, I've had folks, mentors who looked out for me. I had many mentors in different aspects: leadership, management, support, technical ability, and you're going to need all of those folks in your career. Everyone. So to the extent that you're thinking about a mentor, don't have a mentor, you don't just need one, you will have many. And so my advice is to seek those people out, seek people out who are above you from a leadership perspective, a career perspective. Don't just put yourself in a box or your mentors. A lot of people are going to invest in you because of how great each and every one of you is. And your abilities. And so take advantage of all the mentor opportunities that you have. Make sure that your mentor environment is multifaceted across leadership, management, support, technical, and D, all of the above. And if you don't have a mentor, by all means, seek one out. You will benefit from it tremendously. And I've had all of those things in my mentor environment here in public service. And just touching a little bit about the last question, across all demographics, all walks of life, gender, I've had some amazing female and male mentors in my life and still do. And so that's what I would say.
Great, thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I don't know any successful person who hasn't had mentors throughout their career. I've had many over my 35-year career, some that, I've known since I was just new in government, who are still mentors and influential in my life today. I'll remind people, though, mentorship is a two-way street. It isn't just, one way from the mentor to the mentee. It's actually a conversation and a relationship that needs to be built and fostered. But I've had many, and as Joe said, on the technical side about my skills, whatever the skills were for the job, and then mentors on the bureaucracy or on the systemic portions of my job, mentors in administration about how the culture of the organization runs. All those people are very important. And if you find somebody that you mesh with and you have a good relationship with, I think you'll find that they will end up being a mentor at some level or another. But I do think having a mentor is critically important at various stages of your career, regardless of whether you're early or late career person.
Great, thank you. Jesse?
Like Mike said, whoever tells you that they didn't have a mentor and became successful is lying to you. So we all had mentors, and that's true for me too. Ever since I guess the one earlier examples I can think of, someone that is not family, it's one of my math high school teachers. He graded my test differently. He took more points away from me than from other students. And when I asked him why, he said, because you can give me more. So that made me do things little better, not as sloppy. From then on, university, one of my professors on my second year, I was short one course, and she was there, and I said, which one should I take? Because I'm short one course. What can I do? And she suggested I took a last semester course. I'm like, dude, that's like a little intense. And she said, you can do it. And what I took with her, I only took like one class with her. So that gave me some confidence. That gave me something to say, well, if she thinks I can do it, sure, I can. And of course I was able to. When I got hired, the person that hired me right after school, he taught me about business. And he also hired a person that today is one of my best friends. When that company had some trouble and had to close down, we went on and we built a new company. We started that one. We went ahead. We learned a lot. And I was learning from him. He was learning from me. The sister company that I told you, the owner of that company and our company, man, we learned so much that I still carry today. So yes, you do have a lot of mentors around. You just have to learn what to do. And who they are, their story, it all gives some spice to what you learn. So don't shy from who they are, who they were. We all learn. Time makes us old, and we learn as we become older. So use that.
Great, thank you. Is there an essential skill that that you'd be able to highlight for the students on the call today that you have built over the years and that has served you well, in your career to this point? Are there any that you could point to that have been game changers for you? Mike, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think the most, I think the most critical skill to learn early on is how to build relationships and build coalitions. It's been critically important to me in my role as a Navy admiral and as a senior executive in the federal government. To build relationships takes work. It frequently built on trust and shared pain, but it pays dividends later on, and it can be really, really helpful. It's a critical skill no matter what walk of life you have to go into, but definitely the ability to build relationships, which leads to your ability to build coalitions to achieve an objective that you're trying to achieve, is critically important. So those relationships have to be invested in. They take months and years to build, and they have to be protected at all costs. So for me, building relationships has been absolutely critical.
Elizabeth?
I wholeheartedly agree about building relationships. And with that, I think also comes communication and being able to accurately express to somebody your goals, intentions, and motivations. Because I think that, and perhaps this is because I'm a conflict resolution person, but conflict will come up, whether it's large or small. And so even if you are having, butting heads with, somebody that you're working with, you're both there to serve a goal and to serve a purpose. And so it's really vital that you're able to communicate with those people, because those people that are around you in your role are working with you and not against you, even though, maybe you feel like they are, right? But that's why communication and being able to accurately express where you're not meeting together on either a project or a goal is gonna get you far. And I think that it will get you to a place where you are feeling more confident in your own role and your ability to navigate different types of people. And I think that ultimately you'll carry that through in every role that you have in public administration, in public service, and also in every relationship that you build. So I think communication is really vital to your public service career.
Great, thank you. Jesse.
So about traits, think about the Mars rovers, curiosity and perseverance, you know. They have names and those names are traits, and just think about those project themselves, you know, how they got there. And just like the hidden code in the parachute said, you know, they're mighty things. Just remember those mighty things that you're there, they don't have to be big. They may just come in small packages.
Super, thank you. Joe.
All right, so I actually have several, everyone, especially as you try to decide if public service is right for you. Yeah, number one, go after what you're passionate about in public service. Don't let that stop you. Don't let the myths that public service doesn't have tremendous opportunity for you to succeed in what you're passionate about. When I chose accounting and tax, I was good at it. I was passionate about it. I know how odd that sounds, but you know, in my public service career, I went after positions and things that I was passionate about, especially in my current role, you know, helping folks resolve their problems with the IRS. You know, number two, I think is, you know, Mike, you know, nailed it. Public service is about working with people, learning how to navigate relationships, how to not just start, but sustain and maintain relationships all throughout your career. And then the last thing that served me well is thinking outside the box, folks. Don't ever think that public service, a career in public service will put you in a box. You truly have the opportunity to think outside the box, use your unique skill set, take your passion, infuse it with your skill set, and make tremendous strides in public service. So those are the three things that have served me well in my career, and I definitely like to share with folks.
Terrific, thank you. Before we go to the last question or two, I wonder if we could turn to Joan to see if there's anything coming up in the chat box that we need to follow up with. Joan?
Thanks, Paula. Yes, I have two questions that have come in. The first one is, how is a public service career trajectory affected by a degree in public administration versus a degree in public policy? And I would just add to that, are there any degrees that you would say they're not right for public service, or is everything fair game?
Panel, what do you think? Mike?
My own view is just about every college or university major is fair game in government today, just because of the complexity of government. Whether public policy, public administration, public affairs, whatever the case may be, it's actually immaterial unless you're specifically focused on some unique aspect of a career field in government where the position is actually calling for that kind of education. My experience, having been in the civil service for over 20 years, is that is rarely ever the case, except in some niche fields. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I would more focus on what's the type of work you want to do in an organization that you would thrive in with people that you want to spend all day with. To me, it's all about the people that you work with.
Elizabeth?
I would agree that it is more about the breadth than the depth per se. So for example, for me personally, so my degree is in public administration, and I feel that that degree has set me up for a wide variety of public service roles, because I think what you're getting in that degree specifically is a lot of variety about whether or not you are going to be in leadership, whether or not you are going to be sort of in the bureaucratic mode. And so I think that there are a lot of benefits to a degree like that, but I also don't think that, like Mike said, I don't think that that degree is necessarily going to get you a very specific role, because your traits and your experiences are going to get you that specific role. The degree is going to set you up for opportunity, but it's really about you and your experiences. So for me, that degree has helped me. I per se wasn't, when I graduated, I wasn't exactly sure where I was going to be in public service, and I think that it just opened up doors for me. to take a lot of experiences and especially work experiences and sort of let those help me decide where I was going to be specifically, what route I was going to go, whether or not I was going to like try to make my own with restorative justice, or whether or not I was going to sort of fall into a more traditional public service role. So I definitely think that the degree helps open doors, but it's not necessarily the thing that is going to point you a very specific route.
Jesse?
Yeah, degrees are, I guess this is really relevant to whatever agency you're going to. My degree in environmental nothing. My degree is in industrial microbiology. I've never done microbiology work after I left college. Everything is done what the company needed, and every work that I needed after, even in EPA, it's just general sciences. And most of our openings are for general sciences. So if you are a biology major, a botanist, geology, you can apply for many positions. And yes, there are positions in which we require specific degrees, sometimes for engineers, for geologists, hydrogeologists, reef assessors. But that also doesn't preclude EPA from needing other kind of things. We have journalists in there. We have statisticians. We also have accountants and things that you don't necessarily associate with EPA, being the Environmental Protection Agency. It's just that sometimes we need more than others. So one of my positions in the Puerto Rico office was the environmental manager. And I had to deal with how the EPA is green within the building it occupies. But the IRS was also there. And one of my jobs was go to the IRS and figure out, hey, dude, I'm doing this and you're federal. We are, sister agencies. You need to do this. And I had to find someone in that organization that was doing the environmental work. Was that person thinking that because they had some kind of accounting degree they were doing it? They weren't. But somewhere along their career, they had a little seed of environment in them, and they got that hold, and we were able to do stuff. So yeah, don't let your career box you in. Sometimes it's just the generality that you need just to be able to apply to the position.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, not too much more to add. I would say, as Mike mentioned earlier, yeah, you can really probably pick any particular field that you would like to get a degree in, and there's probably room for it in public service somewhere. And so I just recommend that folks, go after something that they're passionate about, that they know they're good at, would like to make a difference in, choose accordingly, and there's probably a job waiting for you in public service.
Great. Joan, there was a second question.
Yes, and now we have a few more that have come in since. So I'm just going to go down the questions as they've arrived in order.
Okay.
The next one is, currently society has evolved into a politically divisive environment. Has anyone experienced questions about political beliefs? Would it be beneficial to register as an independent?
Okay, I'm not going to ask each of you in turn. If you have something you'd like to say about this question, I'll call on you and we'll answer. Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I've been in policy-making jobs most of my federal career, and that means I work with political appointees who are appointed by the administration, by the president. It's honestly never come up, never been an issue. Last 4 years were interesting. I'll just leave it at that. But there have been, aside from that outlier, I would say no questions, no concerns, no real interest in the political makeup of a military officer or a member of the civil service. It is generally one of those things that's not discussed in any detail, and it's certainly nothing that's ever pursued or looked at. I would not worry about registering for any particular political party or not registering or whatever. Do what you want to do. It's a free country, and you're entitled to express your views and your political beliefs and your voter registration, however you decide, and you should feel free to do that. And but I would say it is generally not an issue. It's a little bit different when you're a political appointee and you take a political appointment, where you have to support administration policies up close and personal, and you are hired because of your political affiliations. But short of that, for the typical public service career at both the state and federal level, I would say not an issue.
Thank you. Anybody else on the panel want to speak to that? Okay, let's move to the next one. Excuse me. Thank you, Mike. Joan?
Sorry. Yeah, the last question is, have any of the panelists gone from municipal or city government onto a state or federal career? And if so, what are some of the major differences between those branches, and how are you able to navigate those differences?
Mike?
Yeah, so I first worked for a town, a small city, and then I went to work for a city in Virginia, which received, I would say, 3/4 of its funding from my office from the state and about 25% from the city, or vice versa. And working at the city and state level, you really got to know everybody, and you were able to learn the culture of the organization rather quickly. I found when I left and I I left my city and state job, and I went to the federal government, to the Justice Department, to be a federal prosecutor. It took longer to learn the culture of the organization because it's just a huge behemoth, the U.S. government and the Justice Department. So it does take a little bit of adjustment, but what you do find is there's a whole lot more flexibility. There's a whole lot more funding available for you to get things done, and you actually have greater access to funding to be able to pursue your work mission, whatever the requirements are of your particular career field. And there are more promotion opportunities and more moving around opportunities. So I just found the federal government to be much more of a more flexible, much better resourced employer than at the state or municipal level.
Anyone else want to comment on that question? Okay, Joan, did you have any others for us?
No, that's it. So I'll throw it back to you, Paula.
Okay, great. COVID has certainly impacted everyone's daily life in a variety of ways. Would you all talk about how the pandemic has affected you and your work, and what was a typical day like pre-COVID, and then what has a typical day been like since then? In what ways has it changed? And so let's start with Elizabeth.
Yeah, so my role is situated within public education. So I currently am at a middle school. So COVID has really changed just about everything that we do. So I would say, if anything, this year, both students and staff have really learned to be resilient and flexible. So I think that for students, what COVID has shown us is that they're going back to the equity question, that there's a lot of inequity still among students in their learning environments, and that we have to make special accommodations for students who learn differently. So for example, what we're doing right now is we have a group of students, so they've split students into hybrid groups. So some students come half of the week, the other students come the other half. For students who struggle academically, they're coming every day. So we have really had to make adjustments for the betterment of our students. And that has meant a lot of changes for staff and teachers who are seeing those students more often now than other students, but still trying to maintain the equity among students who maybe would like to be there every day, but don't necessarily have the need for it. So in that sense, we've done our best and have really had to face equity among academic learners. But I think that other than that, it's really shown that students are very resilient, and some students have done very well actually, and are thriving under remote circumstances, which is wonderful to see. But primarily, it's been trying to maintain equity among students who truly are struggling. And so, in that sense, my role is hard, to know that it's hard. It's a hard role to know that students are struggling, and sometimes there's not much you can do about it. But for the most part, it's very rewarding to work with students when they come in, and work with them academically and also behaviorally, because these students are often struggling at home as well. So I would say that while COVID has definitely put a ringer in things, it's also made things even more rewarding, when students are able to thrive in different circumstances that we've had to place them in. So definitely flexibility, resiliency, but it's also been even more rewarding in some senses.
Great, thank you. Jesse.
So that luckily for me, EPA had working on having an environment to work at home for the last 10 years. So when COVID hit, we were pretty well set up to change to working at home. I've been working at home for the last year. Yeah, actually, wow, yeah, full year. Huh. So yeah, initially there were some hiccups because we're not used to having the volume of employees working at home. But for the most part, my work has continued to be the same. A lot of my work, involves a lot of reading. So if you don't like reading now in school, man, get used to it, because there's a lot of reading to do, a lot of evaluation and thinking about your options. How these regulations work and set up. So that part has not changed. The part that has changed is that first, field work. EPA does field work. We have to go out and look at our sites, take samples, deal with people. And that really has put a damper on things. So there is some work that is not done as it was used to be done before, because you still need to have those precautions in place. The other thing that changes, it's the day-to-day office life. One of the things that I like to do, especially when we are thinking about some of our project, what things we need to do, is to go out and talk to someone, face to face, grab a coffee. Those are the brainstorming sessions. We'll grab a coffee and just sit down on the table and talk stuff out until we find what we need to find. That's really hard to do on a video conference. It's just, so that is one of the main changes that I've seen with COVID.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah. So like Elizabeth and Jesse, and I'm sure Mike, COVID has had tremendous impact with functions at the IRS and at the Taxpayer Advocacy Service. I think things at the Department of Treasury have been front and center in the media as it relates to COVID. But before COVID, I was in the office every single day, meeting with taxpayers, meeting with practitioners, having various outreach events, being in the community, spreading the word of what the Taxpayer Advocate Service does. And of course, when COVID came along, all of that came to a screeching halt. It truly multiplied our workload to thousands and thousands and thousands of taxpayers across the state needing assistance obtaining their refunds, filing amended returns and original returns that still to this day have not been processed. So we have seen a tremendous impact because of COVID, and still to this date, we're still reading about all of the hurdles that the IRS is facing because of COVID. I think probably the number one thing that stands out to me, actually maybe a couple of things that stand out to me from COVID, is it's really magnified any organization, private or public, to take a look at how they do business and what do we need to do to adjust to this new environment, and how can we serve our customers, our taxpayers, our folks in a more effective, efficient manner. And there's still a tremendous opportunity there at the IRS, at the Taxpayer Advocate Service. And we are no different than any other organization who needs to take a look at what we do, how we do it, in order to meet the need, which these days, because of COVID, is tremendous.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, it's been a huge impact to us. We've restricted travel for our staff where we can. We've limited office access where we can, but it's very difficult for us because of our secure communications requirements where we're operating at the secret and top secret level of information. We just don't have much of those capabilities at home for people. So it makes it difficult. So what we do is we've adjusted work schedules. We've gathered more office space on our base at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, where we're able to distribute the workforce much greater so that people aren't near each other. We've zoned off our offices so that you're only allowed in the zones where you work. And it's been also a big impact because of families and childcare issues for our workforce. So we've had to change a lot of our practices and get some flexibilities in the personnel rules that allow us to do it. I don't see us going back to pre-COVID days anytime soon when it comes to workforce development and workforce activities and working from home or other locations. I think that's going to continue. We've proven as a society it can be done, and in a lot of career fields, and I think that's probably the wave of the future for the time being.